welcome to the Red Wagon Estate Planning and Elder Law Show, hosted by me, yours truly, Jeffrey Belomo, where we discuss all things estate planning and elder law, and, well, hey, anything else we want to talk about. And today is going to fall under the and anything else we want to talk about category. I have a dear friend of mine, Emily Duncan. Emily, how you doing?
I'm doing great. It's so good to see you.
Yeah, you as well. So just to kind of give a little preface here, Emily, during right as COVID started, I believe, was teaching my daughter flute, and remotely, of course, through a company. And we stayed with her, and she just has changed my daughter's life and just totally loves the flute. And we've also become friends personally outside of that, which is so cool. So it will be a lot of fun today talking about just her experience and some things she's gotten to do recently, and how impacting children is, kind of fun for her. So we will definitely have a really good time today. I just want to remind everybody, the standard disclaimers, right? I'm a lawyer. Please do not take the advice you hear on this radio show, or any other radio show for that matter, as legal advice. If you're looking for legal advice about a particular matter, please contact an attorney in your state that is licensed and that does a lot of the work that you are looking for, so that you know that they fully understand it. We will not be providing any legal advice on this podcast today, and we thank you. All right, wonderful. Now that that's over. So, Emily, tell us a little bit about where you're from and kind of how you got into music.
Yeah, I love the legal disclaimer because I was pre-law for one day of college.
Nice.
So it fills my spirit of another life. So I am from Iowa, the good old Midwest. And I got into music because my mom is a musician. She's a pianist. And I really wanted to be a singer. And she said, all the best singers play an instrument. And I was abysmal at piano. It's hard, when someone in your house is so good at an instrument to also try to do that instrument. So she had a flute, and that's the instrument that I picked. It's very portable.
Yes.
And we were talking a little bit before this about how a lot of times when kids are first starting, they get really interested in music because they have a very competitive spirit, and they like the auditioning for chairs and doing the festivals. And so that definitely was what got me interested first. But then somewhere along the way, I fell in love with the instrument and the music just for the sake of the music itself, and been lugging it around ever since.
Wow. And how did you end up at the college you did?
So I went to the University of Iowa, and I was looking for a school that would let me double major. So I didn't quite know if the conservatory experience was going to be right for me. I also have a degree in English creative writing, and Iowa, has an amazing program that I was super lucky to get to be a part of. So that's really how I picked it. Is I was serious about the flute, but I also wanted to have the opportunity to take lots of other different classes and have new experiences outside of music at the same time.
Well, that's incredible. And then once you kind of graduated from college, what made you decide to continue on?
That was the time for the conservatory.
All right.
College was, let's figure out what we want to do. Let's have lots of different experiences. I had to take the most random math and science classes. But from all of that, I decided that, I could write, and I could do theater, all these other things that I love, without an advanced degree necessarily, but really with the kind of music I wanted to make, you really needed to get a master's at least. And so I decided I wanted to push myself and try to get into one of the top schools and do my master's at one of them. So I ultimately ended up at Juilliard, and that's how I ended up in New York City. And I've stayed because it is one of the best places in the whole country for music making.
Absolutely. Wow. And then, so you just stayed right after Juilliard then. You never left, I guess.
Yeah. Never
wow.
left. The only thing was in COVID, we spent a year with my folks because we weighed the option of stay in an apartment building with 60 other folks, or go to Iowa where you can actually go outside and touch grass while you socially distance. So yes, we were tallying it up, and this is my 6th year in the city proper, 7th since starting grad school.
And what type of gigs are you doing? I'm using that term, I sound like I'm a music person.
Yeah,
here, but
yes, you're right in the lingo.
I know, right? What kind of things are you doing these days?
So I do a mix of contemporary music. So pretty much I play about 90% music by living composers, which is just the most fabulous thing in the world because you can actually ask them what they want. Whereas, Mozart, we can't really call him up and say, is this right? Is this okay? Is this what you want? Right. So contemporary classical music is my specialty, but I also do pop music and theater, and I've started to do some jazz, which has been a fun journey. Not undertaken since 8th grade jazz band. Nice. But yeah, I do a little variety, but really music of our time period right now.
Wow. So a naive, obviously non-flute player asking this question. Do you play the flute the same way if it's jazz versus contemporary versus classical, or is it a very different way to play the instrument?
That's not a naive question at all. That's a really amazing question, and it's totally different. This was one thing I learned in grad school and helped me come on this path was a lot of what you have to do, especially in conservatory, especially at Juilliard, is you're training for an orchestra job.
Right.
And the way that you play for orchestra is very, very different than how you would play for other varieties of music and other stages. And I remember doing a master class with all the other folks in my cohort, and they all had really amazing interpretations, and hearing them behind the screen, because you have to audition blind for these things. No one can see you. Wow. Hearing them, they all sounded really amazing, but they sort of, they had a sound quality that was all the same, very high level, kind of a sweet, high, light sound. And then I came in like a freight train. I play with what we call a really dark sound, a really heavy sound, which is perfect for contemporary music, not so much for the Met. So that was my first tip off of maybe you should pursue this avenue. But yeah, so with the kind of music that I play on the classical side, the contemporary music, it's a lot of strange ways of playing the flute. Playing the flute in ways we maybe haven't heard before. We call them extended techniques. We've got this thing called flutter tonguing, where you roll your R's like, but then you play the flute at the same time. Wow. Beatbox flute. All of these other strange stuff, singing and playing, very, very fun. With jazz, I am pretty square still. I'm still learning. And what makes me sound square is there's a different tone quality to really, really great jazz. They're not so obsessed with the pure tone like orchestrally trained people are. It's always, don't have any air in the sound and get right to the core of the sound and make sure you can blend with everyone. And with jazz, it's much more about making the sound fit whatever the style of the rest of the band is, what the kind of jazz is. It's about the versatility of the instrument and about dancing around all the various chords. And so they don't actually really care about, okay, was that C particularly in tune, and how many cents sharp were you, and all of these things. So you might actually hear a lot of the best jazz players play with what we would call a quote-unquote airy sound. Okay. It's got a little bit more of these extra noises and wind in it, but it makes for a really stunning quality when you put it with the rest of a band. So yeah, it's different every single time. I'm still learning how to do that. I still sound pretty classical and square.
That's amazing. Well, and you mentioned the Met, so I saw a post that you posted recently. Tell us about that experience.
So I can finally talk about it. I was dying because we had to be very hush-hush, but now that it's happened, Monday night I was super, super, super lucky to get to play at the Met Gala. And I was playing with several other fantastic flutists in the city, and we were playing with Lizzo to start her headliner set. And James Galway was there for all the flute fans. James Galway is our greatest living classical flute player. Really? Yeah, and they performed together. It was really special. He hasn't performed live since COVID started. I think it's been 3 years, and this was his first time coming back into the public to do a performance. And I know that it was very special for both of them. And it was just, wildest dreams. I love the Met Gala every year. I had never really clocked that until being a part of it, but always sit down and I want to know what the theme is, and I want to see everybody's gowns and what the interpretations were, and to be a part of that was a total dream come true.
Wow. Yeah, the pictures you posted were amazing. It was so cool to see. It was amazing. That is awesome. That is very cool.
Yeah, we got to wear these amazing little capes, but they were super heavy because they were full of beads. There's a really quick video that I think Vogue posted where you can see them, but they added a couple pounds to the rest of our outfit.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Oh,
so it was fun maneuvering around and playing the flute in that.
Yeah. Now, did you know some of the other flute players you were playing with, or is it so big, the city, that you don't know any of the other flute players?
I knew a few, and then I got to meet some that I knew in name or that I had seen perform before, but had never gotten to have a one-on-one convo or a one-on-one relationship with. And truly, that was the best part, was just meeting the rest of these great flute players, and they were all so nice. You know, I think that flute players get a bad rep sometimes. We have a bit of a reputation for being diva-ish, but none of these folks, including Lizzo herself, nobody was a diva. Everybody was just there to laugh and make music and have a great time and to look fabulous. So it was really a one-of-a-kind experience.
That's incredible. Wow, that's awesome. So I know that you're doing some gigs on the side, but I think you mentioned one other time we talked that you have like a little company on the side that you're working on. What's that all about?
Yeah, so you know, freelancers, we can never get enough of work. We're terrible workaholics. I am building a business, and what we've started with our product, it's in its prototype phase, but it's a web app designed to help other freelancers in New York and New Jersey specifically, but really freelancers everywhere, decide what to charge for various gigs to be paid fairly, and to check rates that they're offered to make sure that they're being paid a fair wage for their time and skills. And it's more of an exercise in trying to change the way that we think about charging as musicians. You know, if you were a contractor or a lawyer or a doctor and somebody called you after hours, you would bill for that time because that's part of your work with them. We don't bill for that. We don't even count it as work.
Oh, wow.
We do a ton of free labor, and nobody really is talking about it that much. And so our goal over at GigCrunch, that's the name of our app, is to just get people thinking a little bit more critically about what they will say yes to, what they'll say no to, what their boundaries are in terms of free work for what types of gigs. And just get themselves paid fairly for their time and expertise, because these individuals train, some of them from the time they're 3 years old, 2 years old, and they should be compensated accordingly.
Yeah, you know, I met a professional services person today, and I was asking, you know, what would it cost to kind of have you do this? And she quoted me, and I just looked at her and I said, you're not charging near enough. Like, you have to drive 45 minutes. Your price is the same as if I went into an office here locally and left 90 minutes later, but you're not factoring in any of your gas, any of your time. Yeah. And you're like an hour away. So you've got 2 hours on either end by the time you set up and well, yeah, I mean, I can't charge for that. Of course you can. Like, if somebody wants the service, if they don't want it, they won't pay you. But if they do, they have to pay you. Otherwise, it's not worth your time.
That's the thing. And we're having the exact same conversations with musicians right now, because transportation is a great one. We don't charge for the time it takes to go to a gig. And often we don't submit payment for reimbursement, like taxi receipts or Uber receipts or train tickets even, which are fairly inexpensive. It's unheard of that you would ask to be reimbursed for something like that.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, when you pop on, if anybody's curious, you can go to GigCrunch.app and play with a calculator for yourself. We're going to be adding some new features in the next year or so. But right now you can play with our prototype. And it's going to ask you lots of things. So it's going to ask you to estimate how much time are you going to spend on the phone and emailing with a client? How much time are you going to have to spend on the train or in a car? Because that's time that you can't be teaching or gigging or doing any of the other work that you want to do. Are you having to buy food while you're there because it's an overnight gig or it's an all-day gig? And then it gives you your adjusted take-home pay per hour.
Nice.
And eventually we're hoping that it will compare to other freelancers in the area so you can get an accurate estimate of what other people are charging that are in your similar instrument. Because that's a big question that I hear a lot too is, I don't even know where to start. How do I charge? I don't know what to charge.
Wow.
Yeah, so we're working on how to solve that problem too, how to get people accurate info on what to charge.
Yeah, wow. And what else are you up to these days? I mean, I feel like you're up to so many things. I don't even know if you could name them all.
Well, my other thing that I do is I'm a producer, which, goes hand in hand with music. A lot of us have to become de facto producers of our own concerts, particularly people in the theater and contemporary spaces. But I am a producer for this really cool new show coming out this summer, which I can't wait to see Jeff and Whitney and Dee at. But it's about the Mothman and a troop of scouts that have to undertake surviving in the woods. Will they make it to the Grand Jamboree? Who knows who's going to win Troop of the Year? The Mothman is there. It's chaos. It's fabulous. So getting more into that work has been great too.
Oh, that'll be so much fun. Oh, you know what? One question I've always wondered, I don't think I've ever asked you this question. Like when you are teaching, say, like a Deanna who, man, I think when she started with you, she was probably what, 10?
Yeah, she was pretty little. I think she had just started the flute.
Yeah.
Just picked it up.
Is that frustrating for a professional to try to work with a 10-year-old? Like that has to be frustrating.
I don't know. I got to tell you that beginners are my favorite people to work with. When I was still teaching, I had a huge soft spot because they are the ones that are the most excited, that are the most resilient and experimental and silly and delightful and all things rolled into one. They come and they're like sponges, excited to discover what's next this week. So I've always had a soft spot for beginners. I think that's cool. The worst thing that sometimes happens as we get older is we lose that experimental spirit and that spirit that just wants to linger in creativity and play and joy. And we can all take a page out of the books of beginners, especially beginner flute players, because it's a pretty frustrating instrument to start.
Yeah. I mean, and because, it was virtual and she was at my home, even if I was working, I mean, I could hear the two of you. I mean, I couldn't hear you, but I could hear her giggling and laughing, and she'd get off and just talk. And I was like, wow, like, I don't remember loving instruments like that. Like, I remember being miserable, and she just giggled, and just the two of you. It was so fun to listen to.
That's the whole thing is, even if you do it as a career, it's gotta be fun, because this is a career that's really hard, that it requires a lot of, like we were saying before, you got to be your own boss, and you got to be your own producer, and you got to be your own manager, and you got to be your own accountant, and all of these things that other careers don't necessarily require of you. And if it's not fun, why are we doing it?
Yeah.
You gotta still love it. There's gotta still be some play.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I have to say, I am so excited. I know we are talking about going to see a competition for DCI this summer. And
yes!
I have not been to one since I think high school. I mean, maybe college, but I am so excited. Like, it is going to be so much fun to hang out with you and your husband and just kind of chill. So we're very excited about that.
It's going to be awesome. I haven't seen drumline since I lived in Texas, which was 15 years. So it's going to be a good time.
It is. I mean, they're just amazing. That's a wall of sound is just, I just remember that feeling when all the horns turned around and just blasted you. You're like, whoa, what was that?
Yeah. For anyone that hasn't seen a drumline show, this is your weekend homework is go online, type in drumline. I mean, you could even do the Ohio State Marching Band. Just watch what these people do, these fabulous arrangements that they make, the arrangements of their bodies on the field. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It's a technical sport. It is so hard.
Yeah. Now, were you a marcher at all, Emily, or no?
I skated through life and I never had to march at all. We had a pep band.
Nice.
I went to a really small high school, and I played the bass drums. So.
Nice. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, American Woman was my favorite, but it required triplets. I'm not that great. So the DCI drummers are going to put me to mega shame. But
all right. Well, you just mentioned a word from my past. So my freshman year of high school, I'm pretty certain I played the largest bass drum in the marching band. And I was a pretty good percussionist. Eventually played the quads for the next couple of years.
Oh,
and,
wow, yeah.
really loved it. But for my freshman year, I ended up on the big bass drum. And I believe the song was March to the Scaffold by Debussy. I'm pretty sure that's the song. And it starts with triplet, 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 ba, 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 triplet, 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 triplet. Well, we would practice in the concert band room, and I'd be on a snare drum. No problem. Triplet, triplet, I could do it. We are good to go. And we'd go out on the marching field, and you turn your hands like this for a bass drum. I couldn't do it. It was so embarrassing. I mean, it was, my band director, he has since passed away, but, I remember I actually wrote him a handwritten letter when I was in law school and had graduated and just apologized for my, not being able to do a triplet. But it is fascinating how your hands being one way versus another way completely changes the way it plays.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I feel like that bass drum takes all different muscles.
Yeah.
And true muscles. It's kind of like those exercises where you snap those ropes on the ground.
Yep.
Like Aaron Rodgers was doing that for a Subway commercial or something last year. But the muscles that you have in order to do those triplets, because you have to have loose wrists, but just very firm upper body strength.
And you're carrying the heaviest drum.
Yes. Yeah.
So, yeah, it was just crazy. Like I'll never forget that. And then the person who was on the second lowest drum ended up having to do it in competitions because we couldn't take a chance. I mean, one time I'd get it, the next time I'd go, and it's like, okay, no, you can't do that. But, that will forever haunt me. And you mentioned triplet, so I figured, what the heck?
I know, and I will never show you my bass drum skills because this is a flute player playing the bass drum with no percussion training. So you couldn't do the triplets, I think I blocked that out from high school.
I did too, actually, until you mentioned it, and I got this like sick feeling in the pit of my stomach. But
no.
Man, it was fun. And then I got to play the quads for the next couple of years, and we had so much fun. I mean, that's a fun instrument. And
it's so amazing.
You get to show off a little bit and kind of have a little bit of fun. So it was really cool. It was really, really cool. Yeah, a lot of fun. So I know you mentioned a few seconds ago that you don't do a lot of lessons anymore. Do you miss it, or are you at the point now where you're like, you know what, I gotta stay focused on my career and move forward?
There are times where I miss it. Mostly I miss the students.
Yeah.
It's the hard part about, being a little bit more choosy with the projects you take on in your time is it's the people that you don't get to work with as much anymore. That's the part that's sad. It's not so much teaching. I don't know what you would call it. It's sort of 6 of one, half a dozen of the other of mentoring and consulting. Okay. But I have been spending a lot more time lately working with composers in a similar capacity to what it felt like to be teaching. They're just much older, and we're talking not in the context of flute lessons, but in the context of you're writing a flute piece for the first time, or you're writing a flute piece and your early stages. What do you want it to sound like? What types of techniques are you interested in picking up and trying? What can I do to help you get unstuck and be inspired to keep on writing the rest of the piece, or to revise it, or to completely throw it out and start over because you're so excited and you have to use this new technique. You have to use a tongue ram, which is my favorite.
Wow.
But yeah, so that is, I think my little teacher heart loves that the most, because I'm getting to use my flute, but it's not so technical. It's not so much, put your fingers here and do this with your air. It's a lot more, again, just being in that spirit of play of, okay, you want it to sound like this. What are 10 ways we could do that? Maybe I'm going to play the flute in a way I've never played it before. Maybe I'm going to pull it apart and I'm going to play on a part that you're not supposed to play on.
Oh, wow.
And that kind of creativity is... it's kind of rare. It's kind of rare in the rehearsal setting. It's kind of rare in the performance setting. Yeah. And I find it a really nice way to reset and just fall in love with my instrument all over again and get inspired to play all over again. So I don't know how one does more of that. If that could be a part-time job, I would do it in a heartbeat.
Oh, that's incredible.
But yeah, definitely love working with composers.
And I can tell you from a parent of a young child who you've touched their life that your time was well spent, and there's a lot of young students out there who will always look up to you. So
I gotta tell you, Dee made my job easy, and if Red Wagon ever needs a theme song, we gotta get Deanna in the studio, because man, she is leaps and bounds ahead of where I was at her age.
You know, I have to tell you, she's come on my podcast a couple times, and it is fascinating because, you know, of course you always look to see what's the viewership, and, you know, is a podcast worth the time to kind of get education out there and to have some fun. And the 2 podcasts that she did with me are the highest rated by far. And it's not even close. And we get requests all the time. And I was like, all right, you know, like I need to just keep bringing her on because she loves it. And I don't know if you've had a chance to listen to them, but she goes on about her favorite Broadway shows and her favorite composers and scuba diving and like history and talk. I mean, it is just fascinating. And I really don't say anything. I just sit there and smile and just proud dad moment, you know, listening to her, because I wasn't that smart. I'm still not that smart, but
I know, you know. I don't know if any of us are as smart as Deanna, but yeah, you've got a co-host seat to fill. It sounds like put her in the hot seat.
Oh, absolutely. And she's already been working on some reels with me and some TikTok videos and short clips where I'm the funny one, or she's the serious one, or she's the funny one and I'm the serious one, and we go back and forth.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, so a lot of them haven't been released yet, but we have them in the hopper, and we're working on the editing. And so she had fun with those, because that was just more funny and just having a good time, and of course in a very different setting than what the podcasts are. But she's loving it. She's loving it. So, well, it was a pleasure to spend time with you. I mean, it's just as crazy how fast the time goes. But just to thank you so much, Emily, for coming. To my listeners, thank you for joining me on the Red Wagon Estate Planning and Elder Law Show, hosted by me, yours truly, Jeffrey Bellomo, where today we talk to my dear friend Emily Duncan about her kind of growing up in Iowa, going to a conservatory, and continuing on in New York City as a professional flute player, but also just producer and just everything, to be completely honest, and touching the lives of many who she's taught lessons in the past, and they'll always look up to her with just a beautiful look in their eyes. So it was so much fun having her today. For those of you in Pennsylvania, if you're looking for estate planning and elder law advice, please give us a call at Bellomo & Associates at 717-845-5390, or on the web, www.bellomoassociates.com. More than happy to assist you. We offer free educational workshops every week in both York and Lancaster County. We would be more than happy to assist you with any questions and education that you may need in those areas. If you're in another state, please seek out an attorney in your state that is licensed to practice in the area that you are looking for. I would like to thank Emily again for joining us on the Red Wagon Estate Planning and Elder Law Show. And until next time, we'll see you real soon.